We're going to talk about John Francis Anthony Pastorius. And now you know why they called him Jaco. Too much to say, baby. Let me just start this way. Everybody knows that Jaco was the premier bassist in Weather Report. The first guy was Alfonso Johnson, great bass player, and Jaco went to a concert down in Miami area when Weather Report came through. And after the concert, this is the way he introduced himself to Joe Zawinul, who was one of the leaders of the group. My name is John Francis Anthony Pastorius III, and I am the greatest bass player alive. He may have had a little bit of an ego. And Zawinul was like, what? You gotta be kidding me. Tell you what, send me a demo tape. We'll see if you all that you think you are. Well, Jaco sent it to him, and Zawinul listened to it, and pretty soon, Alfonso Johnson was gone, and Jaco was the man. Now, there is a story before that, but I wanted to start with that so you get a sense of who and what this guy really was. Born in Pennsylvania, actually, and family kind of migrated, like a lot of families did, from the north to the south and down into the Fort Lauderdale area, actually. And he grew up there, and you could say he had a fairly normal childhood. He was a little different, always was a little different. His brother called him Wild Boy, like some little kid in Jungle Book or something, because he never liked to wear a shirt. He was always at the beach with no shirt on. He liked swimming in the ocean. He loved sports. He was an outstanding performer in baseball and basketball and football, and very, very competitive, very, very successful. Somewhere in his early childhood, somewhere around 10, 12 years old, he decided he wanted to play music. So he went out and bought himself an acoustic bass, not an electric, an acoustic bass. And he started playing that. Now, for you bass players out there that play the electric bass, there's something you don't know about acoustic bass. You must take care of it. You must make sure the humidity is right. You must keep it oiled and polished, because if you don't, here is what will happen. One morning he woke up and his bass had a big crack all the way through it. Oh yeah, they dry out, they expand, and they go boom. And that's what happens. And a lot of string repair guys make a lot of money off bass players who don't take care of their basses. Jaco went, you know what? I ain't got enough time to take care of this. So he got rid of that bass, sold it for what he could get, and he ended up buying a 1962 Fender bass, electric. That or similar bass eventually became what is known as the bass of doom, the bass he's known for, because at some point that 62 Fender had all the frets removed and filled in the fingerboard, so it functioned pretty much as a fretless bass. Jaco obviously made a lot of progress on that electric bass, and at some point he is teaching bass at the University of Miami, along with a young guitarist named Pat Metheny, who's also teaching at the University of Miami at the same time. And they became friends and ended up recording on each other's albums. Before all of that happened, Jaco had made so much progress on the electric bass as a teenager that he ended up playing with Wayne Cochran and the CC Riders, which was a pretty popular kind of a pop funk group of that 70s, late 60s era. And that's his first taste of professionalism, and he just kept going and eventually ended up University of Miami, etc. While doing his stint at University of Miami and living in South Florida and playing gigs, everybody from Sam and Dave to you name it, he loved funk. He was a big fan of James Jamerson. You don't find this written down, and for you people who are not really, fans of the bass, James Jamerson is probably the most imitated bass player alive. Most people don't even know it. He was the session bass player at Motown. And all those great bass lines you like from all those great Motown hits of the 60s and 70s and beyond, that's all James Jamerson, whose journey also was from acoustic bass to electric bass, which is why James played with just his thumb. But Jaco used everything he had. Jaco pioneered chords on the bass and harmonics and all sorts of pyrotechnics, and in the electric years, ring modulators and things like that, and loops, and he used whatever tools were at his disposal. I am lucky enough to have seen him with Weather Report, and I remember he was just outlandishly dressed. He was dressed like a gigantic F, with shoes with the long points and bells on them, and a hat that looked like maybe Christmas came early or something, with a little ball on the end. And he was running all around the stage, jumping up on speakers and the whole shot. And he would have been a distraction if he was not playing so much bass while doing all that. I mean, it would have been inhuman for anyone else to stand still and play that. And Jaco is literally doing somersets and still, man, just all this incredible bass playing. He's just a monster. That's all it was to it. The Weather Report was really good for him, except it gave him money and fame and opportunity. And some of that opportunity led to drinking too much and the use of mood enhancers. Those drugs, okay? Those mood enhancers kind of triggered some mental things that may have been laying just below the surface, like bipolar disorder and paranoia and all that. And so that stuff exploded during this period. And pretty soon, Jaco didn't like touring, didn't like the tour manager, didn't like Joe Zawadu, didn't like the restrictions of the music that they were playing, and soon he was gone. And the next thing he did, he had got a recording contract. After all, he is Jaco Pastorius. He may be a little bit whatever, but he's still Jaco, man. And he used that recording opportunity to create his word of mouth big band. And yet another one of our partners, a good friend of mine, Conrad Butch Thomas, was in that band. Yeah, that Butch Thomas. He was in Jaco's word of mouth big band and did several tours with him. Greatness is right here in St. Pete. You see, I just did Al DiViolo a few minutes ago, and the connection with Goombie, and then Jaco, and the connection with Butch, and then guess what? Butch used to play in Goombie's band. Yeah. And before Butch played in Goombie's band, so did I. So there's always this very, very small community of jazz musicians, and we're all connected in some way, because truth be told, there are but a few of us out here on this planet, and we're just one gigantic family that is connected world over. That's just the way it works for serious musicians. There are a lot of musicians who are not so serious, and they don't find themselves in that connection. But for the people that are serious out there and playing, you know, you got brothers and sisters all over the world, and they're all connected to other brothers and sisters all over the world. Back to Jaco and his word of mouth. Successful project, both musically, but not so much from a financial standpoint. And Jaco's demons are starting to take over him. I mean, he finds himself back in Florida having a hard time holding on to any kind of a job, because despite his enormous talent, his mental issues and his drug dependency, alcoholism, also made him violent. And so he instituted many bar fights, and him being athletic, you know, gave an advantage in some situations. But eventually those things will catch up with you. And he actually kind of forced his way into a concert that Santana was doing in South Florida, down in Sunrise, Florida, actually, which is down in Broward County. And then there was a kind of an after party at a club, and Jaco knew about it, and he attempted to get in, and the bouncer wasn't hearing it. And when Jaco kicked in a glass door or something like that, a fight ensued, and Jaco soon discovered, quite tragically, that this bouncer was an expert in martial arts. And after having a right eye destroyed and his face pretty much crushed and many other parts of his body damaged, he rushed to the hospital and lapsed into a coma and died. I remember that incident very well. It was such a tragic way for such an outstanding musician to meet his end, just brutal. And people who saw it said that there's no way to describe how bloody the guy went, way past what was required to subdue Jaco. Jaco was way past the dude, and the guy just kept on beating him. The guy was originally charged with second-degree murder, but you know how it goes in America. If you got enough money, you got a good enough lawyer, you can plead down. Got pled down to a manslaughter charge. I think he was given 22 months and 5 years probation. The truth is, the guy only served 4 months in jail for killing the only bass player. There's 7 bass players that have been inducted into the Downbeat Jazz Hall of Fame. 7 bass players in the history of this music. Only one of them is an electric bass player, and that one is Jaco. So 4 months for brutally murdering the great, one-of-a-kind Jaco Pastorius. The good news is, we can't do anything about that situation. The good news is music lives on. We're still playing Bach, Palestrina. We're still, hundreds of years later, and we're still playing Jaco Pastorius. There's not a bass player around who hasn't learned how to play Birdland. And more than that, there's not a bass player around who considers himself a great electric bass player who's not learned to play the great feature that Weather Report did for Jaco called Teen Town. And so Jaco still lives. He lives through the hands, the minds, and the spirit of every single one of us musicians, and especially in the minds, hands, heart, and soul of all electric bass players and he will continue to live, because there has only been one Jaco, and there will never be another. So let's make sure that when we have these wonderful geniuses come our way, that we take better care of them than we did Jaco. We don't just dismiss them because they have problems, or because they have issues, or because they are no longer able to entertain us as we want to be entertained. Let's make sure that when they are down, we lift them up so they can continue to create the magic that they were brought here to create and enrich all of us, mind, body, and soul. John Francis Anthony Pastorius, Jaco. Rest in peace, and know that right now somebody has an electric bass in his hand, struggling to play Teen Town. Thank you very much.